It's a cancer that is eating up the country. Gang violence, fights over turf, over colors, over insults real or imagined, and over drugs. Fights are settled not by fist or knives as they were in the past, but now by guns, frequently high-caliber automatic weapons. Good evening, I'm Tom Brokaw, and this is part 2 of our report on gangs, cops, and drugs. Last night, we reported on the gangs of Southern California, Los Angeles County. The numbers there are staggering. There are an estimated 70,000 gang members in some 700 sets, as they call them. In the last 10 years, some 3,000 people have been killed in gang-related violence. Another 15,000 have been wounded. And there's no end to this violence in sight.
Units at 13861, 13861, drive-by shooting just occurred. One victim down, 5318 South Main.
Here you go. Here's the victim down. This guy's got about 4 pints of blood laying on the sidewalk.
4871. All units at drive-by shooting.
The dudes over here shot one of their homeboys, so they was gonna get him back, you know. So they came over here and said they was gonna shoot him up.
When is it gonna stop? I just don't know when it's gonna stop.
Gangs are gonna be here, and they're always gonna hate each other.
Hey, my man. Just turn around, face the house. Cocaine. You have the right to remain silent. Anything that you say one can be used against you in a court of law.
The gangs have a profit out of cocaine. It's a moneymaker for them, but for the moral aspect of it, they can care less who becomes victim of it, as long as they make their money out of it.
We love to party, shoot, kill, and fight. Living is dangerous.
They got them AK-47s out here now.
Tearing shit up.
They ain't got no more sticks and knives. They got AK-47s and Uzi assault type weapons.
6 shots fired, tag 85.
1515 West 106, shots fired.
2 and 1 on the unit.
30 George, 10-9 at 1020, and I'm rolling from Crenshaw. You just never know. You never know when it's going to happen or where it's going to happen. I really don't see it getting better. I talk to too many kids here, you know, and they say, hey, you're never going to get rid of it.
If they kill one of us, we're going to kill one of them. If they jump us, we'll jump them. That's the way it is. That's the way it'll always be.
But must it always be that way? Well, one of the people that you saw in that report is with us in the studio tonight. He is Herb Jerome, a Los Angeles County Deputy Sheriff, a kind of one-man band working against the gangs in that county out there. We'll be talking with Herb tonight. We'll be talking with other law enforcement officials from around the country. The federal drug czar, Bill Bennett, will be with us from Colorado. Mayors, and here in our studio tonight as well, we have a lot of interested parties. Some of these people are former gang members. Some of them have been victims of gangs, and some are mothers who've been trying to keep their children out of gangs. Because what's been going on is not confined to Southern California. What's happening there is that the gangs of Southern California are now taking their lethal tactics and their drugs across this country. And that is our story tonight.
Listen, always out here, you know, doing our little thing when they pass by, you know.
Gangs, cops, and drugs. An NBC News special.
Jay Trotter always knew the odds were against him.
This dilemma of gangs, cops, and drugs is not confined just to Southern California. It is striking across the country. It is insidious. It is pervasive in this country, and it is extremely dangerous. We want to show you on a map now how the Bloods and the Crips of Southern California, the two main gangs, have spread out. This is what they've done. These deadly traveling salesmen have first moved up the West Coast to Portland, Oregon, and Seattle. There was very little competition in the drug markets there. Next, they moved into the country's heartland, Kansas City, Des Moines, Omaha, St. Louis. Others went south to Dallas, Phoenix, Oklahoma City, and Shreveport, Louisiana. The Bloods and the Crips have blazed a trail of drugs and violence to the east as well. Akron, Ohio, York, Pennsylvania, Baltimore. They're even in Hawaii and Alaska. In fact, it's now estimated that they're in some 55 cities across the country. The formula is really very simple. They move into cities where there's very little competition for the drug market. To show you what's going on, we'll take you now to the city of St. Louis, Missouri. St. Louis, Missouri, home of the Cardinals and the Arch. Not the sort of place you'd think would appeal to thrill-seeking LA gangsters, but they're here for the simplest reasons.
Better money, ain't there as many people out here selling cocaine than it is in LA. Less people selling it, more money.
This 20-year-old blood gang member came from Inglewood, California to St. Louis about a year ago. He's a suspect in a drive-by shooting in St. Louis, but he was arrested for possession of cocaine.
Ounce in Los Angeles costs $4.25. You bring it to St. Louis, you can sell it for $1,000, so you're making a bigger profit.
Police estimate that some 50 to 100 Crips and Bloods have set up business in St. Louis in the past year. Now, almost half the cocaine sold here is imported from California.
Along with dealing their drugs, they come here, they say, to chill out, just to not have to be concerned with the violence associated with colors and with turf.
Detective Terry James tracks LA gang members in St. Louis.
Some of them are more sophisticated than others. They come in with an organization, and others may just have a small operation of crack houses where they're dealing smaller amounts.
Cocaine out here is just overruling everything.
Sheila was making her living as a model until some Crips started using her apartment as their headquarters. She became addicted to cocaine and could not refuse when the Crip leader told her to smuggle the drug from California.
So I was desperate, and New Year's, he asked me, hey, we need somebody to get out of here now and get to Los Angeles for us.
Sheila flew to Los Angeles carrying 2 stacks of bills that were supposed to add up to $12,000 for a Grape Street Crip.
And he noticed that one of them, that his stack was $6,000 short. So there I was to blame. And he called up the guy who sent me out there. And the guy who I thought was my friend told him she must have took the money. I thought I was going to die. I really thought that I was going to get killed.
But the Crip believed Sheila was innocent, and he accompanied her back to St. Louis to kill the man who had shortchanged him. Sheila had more than a half a kilo of cocaine taped to her body. They were arrested at the airport. The Crips got long prison sentences. Sheila spent some time in jail and in drug rehabilitation.
I just can't even think of what would have happened if we wouldn't have been stopped that day and this guy would have went on and killed this guy. Maybe my life was saved by being caught.
Although St. Louis police have attributed 3 murders to the Los Angeles gangs, the turf wars and drive-by shootings so common in California still are rare here. One reason, there are enough customers for everyone to make money selling cocaine.
Everybody has their section they own. That's like a turf. And we don't want neither one of us to get hot by shooting at each other. We'll sit down and make a deal. It won't never be no friend thing, but this is business.
And before this hour is out, we'll take you to other cities across the country where they're having similar experiences. But we want to talk about this now with, among others, Bill Bennett. He's the new federal drug czar. He's in Aspen, Colorado tonight, and at the moment he's working with President Bush on a new anti-drug plan for the country. And also, Los Angeles County Deputy Sheriff Wes McBride. He helps other cities as they try to deal with the LA gang members who've spread out from Southern California. And of course, I've already introduced Herb Jerome, who was my kind of guide-on and mentor as we traveled through Southern California talking with the gangs there. Mr. McBride, let's begin with you first of all. Is there a lot of denial on the part of many of these other cities that they have a gang problem?
Well, there's some denial. Part of the problem is they don't recognize a emerging gang problem until it's already there. Sometimes it's denial. Sometimes it's just non-recognition.
What's the first clue that you should have if you're a mayor or a police chief in a place like, oh, say, Des Moines, Iowa, or a smaller city in the heartland somewhere?
Well, groups of youth hanging around corners, certain hangouts that they were never at before, drive-by shootings that had never occurred, all of a sudden graffiti springing up around towns, up and down alleys, assaults.
How do these Crips and Bloods get all the way from Southern California to Kansas City and St. Louis and Omaha and parts of the Midwest and the Far East?
Like anyone else, they'll drive, fly.
But is but is it organized? I mean, do they have a scheme in mind when they leave? Do they set out to set up a branch office of some kind?
Not usually. I mean, sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. The original move, many times, has nothing to do with drugs. It's getting out of town here. Someone earlier said to chill out. Either we're after them, or another agency's after them, or other gangs are after them, and they go back many times to some relative's home to hide out. They look around, find out they're not recognizable there. Their actions are unfamiliar, and they set up a business.
Bill Bennett, as you design the president's anti-drug plan, are you going to have to start thinking about this interstate commerce on the part of gangs and maybe mobilizing some of the federal law enforcement agencies that have not yet gotten deeply involved, like the FBI?
Sure, Tom, but it's not a matter of starting to think about it. We've been thinking about it, and in the strategy we'll present, we'll be talking about it. I think Wes McBride's points are very good. When you go into cities in America, and I've been in a lot of them, the local authorities may not recognize gangs. They recognize violence, though. They know they've got trouble. It's hard to find a city in America that doesn't have a crack problem and a violence problem associated with it. Whether it's random violence or gang-orchestrated violence may not be clear for a while, but the bottom line's the same. Trouble, big trouble, bad trouble.
And what about the consumers? You're going to crack down on the consumers and cut off the market if you can?
Of course. We have to press down on all points of this. In the 70s, we kind of forgot that the person who was using drugs was driving the whole system. And that person has to be held accountable. There are lots of ways to do it. You don't have to put every casual user in jail, and no one's proposing that. But I think you have to have sanctions at every point in the system. Let's take away driver's licenses. Let's impose some of those fines that we have under federal law. Let's make people think twice about taking drugs. Let's make it real.
Herb Jerome, you've been working with gangs for 18 years now in Southern California. By consensus that you know more about the gangs of Los Angeles County than anyone else. How have they changed in their attitudes in the 18 years that you've been watching them?
Well, Tom, one of the things that scares me the most is the kids just have no concept of the value of human life. So their life and others. And consequently, we're seeing a lot of random things happening. People are dying for no reason. And this is a big change from when it first started.
But you raised kids in that area, and they turned out all right. What caused the change in the 18 years or so? Why have we gone from this kind of sense of good values and a sense of right or wrong to where it just doesn't exist anymore?
Well, I don't want to lay this at the feet of parents, but one of the things is obvious that a lot of parents aren't raising their children. And that, along with the normal peer pressures, can be a volatile thing. You know, it's causing a lot of the kids to shirk authority, you know, even the schools. A lot of people are not really concerned about the problem, even today. You know, if it isn't happening to you, then I don't want to hear about it.
All right, we're going to ask the three of you to stay right there because we're going to be talking with you a lot more during the course of this program. We're going to show you what's going on in Portland, Oregon in a moment. They've had to call out the National Guard in that city. It's gotten to be so bad.
There's never been a roach killer like this before.
Oh, could have done it! Thanks to Dexatrim, I was never hungry, even around food.
Millions of people prove it. Nothing works harder to help you lose weight.
Get my baby! Get to the bathroom!
It is an all too familiar sight in America today, a drug bust. But this one is unique. This is Portland, Oregon. And with the police, wearing the same blue jackets, are National Guardsmen.
She's got dope on her. She was trying to hide it.
The Oregon Guard was called out when neighborhood groups demanded help to fight gangs. 35 guardsmen at any one time, out on raids and helping process kids, rounded up for violating a nighttime curfew aimed at the gangs.
Get them out of here. Whatever you have to do, get them out of here and close down the drug trade.
The solutions to our problems are going to come from us.
Ron Herndon and his coalition of black and white neighbors were fed up. 3 years ago, they warned the city that the Bloods and the Crips had arrived from Los Angeles, bringing terror, gang tactics, and gang graffiti, determined to sell drugs and gain control through Northeast Portland.
There was no great hue and cry from the powers that be. And I think that's why we are where we are. The community did everything you could expect a community to do. We pulled together, we had meetings, we demonstrated, we picketed.
When you have a pager, what do you go by on the street?
Predominantly white and middle class, Portland was one of the first cities outside Los Angeles confronted with the Bloods and Crips and their drug trade. Experts say it's normal for a city to deny it has a problem. Now, with the gang population nearing 2,000, Portland is fighting back. But neighborhood groups want more. More police, more troops, tougher justice.
For some of these guys who came up here from California, put them in jail, take the keys to the jail, put them on a jackrabbit's ear, and use them for target practice.
If it turns ugly...
Sergeant Steve Hollingsworth is a member of a task force formed to track down and prosecute gang drug dealers. He grew up in a neighborhood now infested with drug houses.
It's dependent upon us to reassure the community that we're not going to let these people come in and totally take over segments of these neighborhoods, that we are there, that we are a resource, and that we are going to come in and take a strong posture.
We're walking down 6th Avenue with just about...
Police and neighborhoods have created another resource, foot patrols, to try to talk youngsters out of joining gangs. Disadvantaged kids find it hard to resist the gang's promises of easy money and power.
In terms of when I will really feel successful, I guess it's just if I've reached that one, you know, it's got to be that one kid that says, I listened to what you said and it changed my life.
He knows you're out
Yes.
this late at night?
Yes.
13 years old?
Yes.
You just asking for trouble.
Jimmy Brown is a juvenile counselor who says Portland has made a start, but it will continue to lose its children to gangs unless it addresses the underlying family, school, and unemployment problems.
It's difficult to impact a child who is making $300, $400, $500 a night and giving some of that money to the parent to live by just saying, I'm going to get you a job working at McDonald's or something for $3.85 an hour.
Like Brown, Jean Henry thinks the solution begins at home. Her daughter, Chatrell, got involved with the Crips and became Portland's first gang murder victim. Mrs. Henry was left with an orphan granddaughter and a message for other parents.
Take time with your child. Do things with your child. Love your child. Because life is so precious, but it's so short. And it can easily be snuffed away. I hurt, and I'll hurt for years to come.
Who would ever think that you'd hear those kinds of stories from a city such as Portland, Oregon? The mayor of Portland, Oregon is Bud Clark, and he's with us tonight from Buffalo, New York, where he's on vacation. He ordered out the National Guard. What about that, Mr. Mayor? Did you wait too long to call out the Guard? Was there a kind of denial on the part of the majority community about the problem?
No, we were looking for resources from the federal government, and the U.S. Conference of Mayors has been saying that this problem exists, and I'm very pleased that President Bush has said that we're going to take a full-court press and solve this problem some way now, because we've been asking for help for a long time, and by calling out the National Guard, using them for support so that we can put more police officers on the street, is a great help. And it means it's additional resources. It's reallocation of resources, and this national security problem of drugs needs to be addressed, and it's like the Second World War, as Chief Fitzsimmons of Seattle said, and we haven't declared war yet. So President Bush and his full-court press is coming around.
What are we going to have, though? Occupational armies in the streets of American cities, the National Guard, not particularly well-trained in law enforcement areas.
No, we're not using, Tom, we're not using the National Guard in the way that it sounds like we're using them. We're using them for office work, for relieving officers of their duties, so that we can do 2 raids instead of 1, for instance, while they're booking somebody at the police station or transporting them, we can book that person. So we're just looking for resources. Wherever we can find money and resources and people, we're going to find it, and we hope it's going to come from the federal government.
Bill Bennett, the federal government has spent something like $21 billion, I think, on the drug problem in the last 8 years or so. Has a lot of that just gone down the drain, and will more money really be the answer here?
Some has gone down the drain, and simply spending more money isn't the answer. Spending it well, spending it wisely can make a difference. I was in Portland recently and had a good talk with Bud Clark, and I appreciate what he's saying about our efforts. I think they will be real, but I think Bud would agree that Portland and Oregon, in some ways, let their own immune system down a little bit. When I visited with law enforcement people in Portland, they said one of the reasons they thought they had problems was that it was perceived by gang members and others that Portland was soft on drugs, soft on crime, had not built very many prisons, and was not in the business of prosecuting. When word like that gets out among a gang or criminal element, you can expect a large immigration of bad guys to your neighborhood. I think that the mayor's responding and the community's responding, but one can't fool around and be ambivalent about this stuff. You've got to act and act quickly. Now I think the governor and the mayor are acting.
As Herb Jerome will tell you, however, in Los Angeles County, Herb, you arrest someone now, how long are they in jail? I mean, you can't count on being in there very long, can you? Because the jails are simply filled to overflowing as a result of the gangs.
Oh, if it's a misdemeanor, Tom, and if the sentence is 36 days, the only time he's going to spend in jail is the time that he spends at the station where he's booked and being processed, and he's out of the door.
But that must be enormously frustrating for law enforcement people.
It is. It is.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Tom, it's terribly frustrating. I have the greatest regard for Herb Giron, and what he said earlier and last night I think is absolutely right. The answer, of course, is the family. It's the church. It's the school. It's the neighborhood. But in the meantime, while these guys are running around, as that one gang member said, partying, shooting, killing, and fighting, let's build the prisons. This is where these people belong when they violate the law, and let's not frustrate law enforcement. A lot of people don't like this because it's not terribly complex intellectually, but let's put up the resources to build these prisons. If we don't, innocent people are going to be slaughtered in the streets, and these guys deserve nothing less than doing hard, long time.
Mayor Clark, is that the answer, or what about the man that we heard from Portland who said you've got to do something about the social conditions here, about education and job opportunity?
Well, we need sanctions at every level, like Dr. Bennett has said. But at the same time, what we really need in the long term is social change. And we have a regional drug initiative in the city of Portland, which is calling for a program, a comprehensive program at many levels. And it's the changing attitudes. This recent poll I'm very encouraged about. And then we have JobNet, finding jobs for people in the community, and getting parents involved, getting the whole community involved, and neighborhood revitalization to turn the problem around. As I've been traveling the East, I see it almost everywhere I go, the same sorts of problems, and I don't want it getting to Portland, into Portland the way that I've seen it other places.
All right, Bill Bennett and Mayor Clark, let me introduce you to Matthew Byrne, who lost a son in the war on drugs in this country. He was a policeman in the city. Eddie Byrne was assassinated, there's no other word for it, as he stood guard outside the home of a man who was trying to do something about drugs on his block. We saw the brave people of Portland trying to take control of their own neighborhood, but is that a high-risk proposition given what happened to your own son who was in uniform at the time, Mr. Byrne?
Well, it's a high-risk proposition, Tom, but it's one that has to be done. I agree with everything that's been said here tonight. The steps that have to be taken, the parents have to become involved, prevention, rehabilitation, treatment, education. But I think the first step has to be to take our streets back. Because until we take our streets back, none of these other programs are going to work. And when these gangs walk in with immunity, in a sense of the word, and they feel that they can get away with anything, you're not going to be successful with your other programs, because when somebody walks out of the rehabilitation center, there's a guy standing on the corner ready to sell them something. So I think the first step is taking the streets back, and that requires, I think, a coalition of both the population as a whole and the police, because the police alone can't do it. They need the help of the public.
And any disagreement with that, Mr. Mayor?
I absolutely agree with that, and that's what we've got in Portland, Oregon. We've got everybody working together, including the neighborhoods and the community groups, the public and the private sector, and we've got jails being built at the state level. And don't come up from California to sell drugs, because you'll be in jail. And we want it so you won't work in Oregon if you take drugs, too. We have a program in that area.
All right, thank you very much. We'll be back in just a moment with more. We'll take you to another heartland city. We're going to take you to Omaha, Nebraska, and you'll meet the mother of a child who got involved in gangs and share her frustrations with what happened to him and what happened to their family. We'll be back in a moment.
Gangs, Cops, and Drugs continues. Here again is Tom Brokaw.
Listen to this story from Tacoma, Washington. Tacoma, Washington in the scenic Northwest. Last week, 2 Crip gang members were sentenced to long prison terms for having murdered a young teenager in that city, a girl who had waved at their car. They thought that she was giving the sign of a rival gang, so they simply blew her away. They are at least in prison. We want you to meet now a woman who's been on the front line of this war against gangs and drugs in America, Althea James. She has 7 children, 3 of her own, and she's raising 4 children from her brother. She moved all of these kids from Flint, Michigan to Omaha, Nebraska because she thought that that would be a healthier, a safer environment for them. Omaha, Nebraska, however, turns out not to be that. America's heartland, Omaha, Nebraska. There were always neighborhood cliques here, but in the mid-'80s, the Crips and Bloods from Los Angeles began recruiting youngsters in the city's housing projects to push their drug trade. With the gangs came graffiti, drive-by shootings, and recently, a death.
What was your reputation around here?
Shooting people in the face.
On the streets of Omaha, Robert Penn is thought to be a leader of the Crips. He got into the gang for the drug money and for self-preservation.
Gotta go kill. They trying to kill you. They don't care, so, why should I care?
Sergeant Bob Polk works on gangs for the Omaha Police Department. We asked him why Robert Penn's name appeared on one wall with a line through it.
I would say to Robert Penn that there's some people out there that are probably out to get him.
Mayor Morgan, Portland, Oregon, has made some use of the National Guard addressing the problem before us. You're taking a look at what they're doing there in Portland, right?
That's right.
Today, gangs are considered to be one of Omaha's most serious problems. Security in the housing projects is tight. Community groups have jumped in to pull local gang members off the street and into programs that stress physical discipline rather than gang violence. To those who run the programs, it is no surprise that gangs got a foothold in Omaha's low-income areas.
We've been in a situation where the past presidential administration had no feeling for inner-city young people at all. Social programs were cut and taken out without looking at the consequences.
Joe Edmondson is a kind of father to some of Omaha's kids. A paraplegic since he was 17, he tries now to get to teenagers before the gangs do.
The gangs offer them a sense of belonging, to be a part of this particular situation. No matter where you are in the strata of the situation, you are a Blood, you are a Crip, and whatever I do, we do.
The key to his program is wrestling and talking, improving the self-esteem and the motivation of Omaha's young.
Move your feet to the inside.
Willie is one of Joe's stars. A 3-time state wrestling champion, he's won national awards. If Willie is the success story, Sam, his brother, has not done as well. Sam is a member of the Crips. He found drug money just too enticing.
You want to flash this money, you want to wear this gold all the time and everything. That's why I had got into it. It was basically because of the money.
Today, Sam says he'd like to get out of the gangs, and he envies his younger brother.
I blew a lot of things. I had a lot of things coming to me. I had scholarships and stuff. And now that I see him wrestling and everything, and he's an undefeated wrestler and stuff, I'm proud of him.
As for Robert Penn, he too has had enough. He's learning about television from a local reporter and says he is out of the Crips for good.
You can't do it forever. Sooner or later, you're going to die. Somebody going to get you sooner or later. You can't do it forever.
As for the people of Omaha, they believe with enough police and enough programs to help their young, they still have a chance of stopping the gangs before they get out of control. Someone who is trying to do just that is Althea James, who's with us tonight. She tried to keep her 14-year-old son Delano out of the gangs, but she knew, in fact, that he was moving back and forth between Omaha and Flint, Michigan, moving drugs for the gangs. Who did you turn to when you tried to get help for you and your family and for your son?
Well, I turned to a lot of law enforcement agency, tried to find ways to, stop him from doing what he was doing. But every time they picked him up, they would turn him loose. Nobody would hold him because he was 14 years old. They couldn't hold him.
So they just sent him back to you?
Right, kept flying him back. It was like a comic, they fly him, they bring him home, they fly him, and I was just tired of it.
Now, Herb Jerome was talking earlier about the need for parents to be more discipline-minded. You obviously had your son's best welfare at heart. You were trying to do something about it, but you weren't getting much support.
No.
What did you do eventually?
Tricked him into going to the youth center. I went down and saw a city prosecuting attorney, and she said that she would give him 1 day in there if I could get him out there. So I tricked him into going out there.
And then what happened?
And they kept him, and they finally just took him, and he got smart with the judge, and they put him away.
Is there an absence in the black community of too many neighborhoods in this country of strong black male figures for young men to turn to
Yes,
get some
it is.
kind of advice?
Yes, it is. You know, if you love your kids, and you know, if you are a single mother, that's still no excuse. You have to be a mother and a father. And to see them destroy Delano, and I had brought him so far to do much better, I wasn't going to stand for it. So
I was just going to ask Herb Jerome, you're out there in the streets all the time. What about the role of the black male in a lot of these communities and a lot of these neighborhoods? Should it be more visible, Herb?
Yes, it should be more visible, but again, the absence of the male, you know, there's nobody there to be visible. However, by the same token, Tom, I know a lot of black mothers in Los Angeles who are doing a wonderful job with their children. So again, you know, I don't want to leave the impression that, you know, we've got some straight and fast rules here about parenting or whatever. There's so many reasons why kids join gangs that I don't want to put all this on a parent, or on a single parent for that matter.
And we should also say that in Los Angeles County, 5 to 10% of the kids belong to gangs. Not every kid that you see up and down the street will belong to a gang. Isn't that right?
That's correct.
We also want you to meet tonight Dr. Carl Taylor. He's a professor of criminal justice at Jackson Community College and Michigan State University in Lansing, Michigan, and he's with us from there tonight. He's one of this country's leading academic authorities on gangs. You've been listening to all of this, Dr. Taylor. What about it? More law enforcement, a tougher crackdown at home, or do we need to address the social conditions more directly, or is it a combination of the three in your judgment?
Well, it's definitely a combination of all of the above. It certainly is a socioeconomic problem, and we're not facing that. We can take them and lock them up, we can beat them up, but if they return to the same social conditions, we're going to have the same problem again. I think also part of the problem is that many gang members do not feel part of America. They are not experiencing a kinder or gentler America. They have not seen that kinder or gentler America.
What about this emphasis on money, which is only heightened by the enormous profits that can be realized now from drugs?
True, but that's also reflective of the larger society. The worship of mammon is a problem for all of society. When you turn on the television, you see people driving Mercedes-Benzes, you see your athletes. In our society, we have placed $1 as our value measurement. So they're simply doing what they see the larger society doing, and they have blocked avenues, and I'm certainly not condoning their behavior, but they're simply doing what the rest of America is doing.
Yeah, Bill Bennett, what about that business about kinder, gentler America?
The hell they are doing what the rest of America's doing. This is the worst possible answer that we just heard. Blame somebody else. It's not their responsibility. As long as we have apologists from the academy or anywhere else standing up saying that these gang hoodlums can blame the larger society, we're not going to get anywhere. Unless you believe in individual responsibility, you're not going to solve this problem. The reason that a lot of young kids in these communities may not be working and applying the work ethic is because these gang members are destroying the work ethic, showing that you don't have to work to get rich. And we've got to respond to that and respond to that directly. And not by cleansing all of society somehow, but by attacking the problem right where it is, where bad people are being predators on good people in the inner cities of this country.
But I must say, Mr. Bennett, that I was in Watts 20 years ago, right after the riots, and there was a lot of money poured in, and there was a lot of talk from the majority community about how they were going to make it better. And there really aren't any more job opportunities down there. The schools haven't improved in the 20 years, and in fact, the dropout rate is equally high, and there still is a kind of underground racism that exists in a lot of places where people go and try to get jobs these days.
Tom, there are broad and deep social problems in this society. They need to be addressed. Social conditions need to be addressed. Schools need to be addressed. George Washington High School in Watts is a lot better school than it was when you were there, by the way, George McKenna's school. But the question for a lot of communities is, what do we do tomorrow? And if you think you can bring about social change or improve job opportunities or better schools when you've got an environment of drive-by shootings and guys making $1,000 a night in the drug trade, you're not going to improve anything with that circumstance. The first thing you do is take back the streets, get order, so decent people can get back and get to their jobs and get their kids to their schools.
Dr. Jackson?
I'd like to respond to that, Mr. Brokaw. I'm certainly not condoning the violence by no shape or form. But I think that when we have others in society who are getting away with murder, and I might add that gang members are not flying dope in from Latin America. There are many people involved in this activity that are not in gangs but are reaping the benefits. We have a quisling culture, and there are many people who are talking out both sides of their mouths. So I would be very careful before we label the gang members as the total problem. We could remove drugs, but until they feel part of America, they're going to find something else to make illegal money.
Dr. Carl Taylor in Lansing, Michigan tonight, thank you very much. We're going to continue with all of this in a moment. We're going to talk with an expert on international terrorism who says that we have our own form of terrorism in this country, a series of little Beiruts in a moment.
Driven man.
We all got weapons. Anybody can blow anybody away.
An outraged witness.
This kind of thing can cause a major international incident. Are you aware of that?
I told them, and they don't care. Somebody stumbles, they don't mean to shoot you. You could get killed real easy.
If I was them, I'd be looking for a little payback.
Michael J. Fox, Sean Penn, Casualties of War, rated R. Starts Friday at select theaters.
For frequent sufferers with the decongestant action of Sudafed and a powerful antihistamine. Sinutab Allergy works for 12 full hours to help stop the itching, stop the runny nose, stop the sneezing. For 12 full hours, Sinutab Allergy helps stop it all.
You're about to buy a new house, your first house.
I have some help for you in understanding just how widespread this problem is in America of gangs, cops, and drugs. We've been hearing a lot about Northern Ireland for the last 20 years or so, the sectarian violence that has been going on there. Do you realize that fewer people have been killed in Northern Ireland in 20 years that have been killed in Los Angeles in the last 10 years as a result of gang-related violence? The RAND Corporation, which is a think tank in Southern California, has made a study of all of this. An international expert on terrorism is Brian Jenkins. We normally talk to him about what's going on in the Middle East, but in his study of America, Mr. Jenkins has concluded that we have really created a series of little Beiruts in our own country. We'll be talking to him about that in just a few moments. We told you that this is a problem that exists from coast to coast. It begins in Southern California. It stretches all the way to Baltimore, Maryland, and its environs. Hagerstown, Maryland is a part of rural America where old-fashioned values still count. County fairs for the family, Little League baseball. Neighborhood streets are quiet and friendly by day. But at night, a transformation takes place. When crack cocaine is openly sold and smoked, it's one more sign that even rural America is now vulnerable to the evils of big cities.
Here on this corner, there was two drug dealers. They had a gun battle at approximately 3:30 in the afternoon when the school buses were unloading.
Like one night I was walking home from work and I was looking down the road for a shotgun. The guy said, "Oh my God, I got the wrong one." When I looked down the gun, I just fell to the ground and started crying and howling, "Oh my God, no."
For Detective Sergeant Tom Bowers of the Maryland State Police Narcotics Division, it isn't just the drugs that are the problem.
We're also beginning to see an emergence of the presence of some LA street gang members that have appeared here in Maryland starting about a year and a half ago.
And what we don't want in federal law enforcement is to allow them to get a foothold, a strong foothold in any other community like they have in Los Angeles.
Assistant U.S. Attorney Harvey Eisenberg is coordinator of the Mid-Atlantic Drug Task Force in Baltimore. He was responsible for the prosecution of Armando Mines, the first known L.A. Crip gang member to operate on the East Coast.
You have to understand that the Crips aren't just a small group of people.
Mines had an associate, fellow Crip Roy Summers.
You know, the word kept saying the money was on the East Coast. The money was on the East Coast. So I just packed up one day and decided to go to the East Coast and make some money.
Mines and Summers are now serving 13 and 20-year sentences, respectively, in federal prison.
I mean, every day that they lock a Crip up or they sentence a Crip the way they sentenced me, you know, it's going to be always another one being produced. And it's never going to end, you know? It's never going to end.
John Wilder was the DEA special agent in charge. He sees Mines and Summers as the beginning, not the end of the problem.
They were basically in the infancy stage of really setting up their operation here and really getting it going.
At Baltimore-Washington International Airport, state narcotics officers watch Los Angeles passengers deplane.
We've identified in the last 6 to 8 months 6 known Crip members passing through BWI Airport. Of those 6, 2 were juveniles who were arrested with 5 kilos of cocaine.
In Hagerstown, Detective Sergeant Bowers briefs officers for a raid. They'll look for drugs and incriminating documents.
Personal phone books, ledgers, telephone numbers, photos.
Stay down, stay police. I want to see your hands right now.
One of the arrested men was the brother of an LA gang member, but only a more thorough search of the seized documents will establish if there is a conspiracy with Los Angeles drug gangs. Hagerstown still is a small town of 34,000 people in rural Maryland, but its serenity is threatened.
We do not want the Los Angeles street gangs to be able to get a foothold here in Maryland.
We can all together save ourselves, or we can all together fall prey to gangs like the Crips and Bloods. There are more of us good people than there are of those bad people.
And it's that experience in Hagerstown, Maryland, and in cities across this country that led Brian Jenkins to conclude that we have created our own series of Beiruts in this country. Mr. Jenkins is with us tonight from Hawaii. Is that an exaggeration, though, Mr. Jenkins, to say that it's Beirut?
No, I don't think it is an exaggeration. You cited the statistics yourself. We look at the total number of gang members in Los Angeles, some 70,000 gang members, 10,000 of whom, according to the Attorney General's report, are involved in some aspect of drug trafficking. Those numbers alone exceed the number of guerrillas in Peru. They rival the number of guerrillas in Colombia. They outnumber the members of Hezbollah in Lebanon. In terms of the amount of violence, again, 452 gang-related killings last year in Los Angeles. That is more than the total number of Americans killed in terrorist attacks around the world in the last 5 years. So I don't think it is an exaggeration.
Any similarity between the gang activity in Southern California and the infamous Medellin cartel in Colombia, which is the source of so much of this cocaine?
Oh, I think you see similarities emerging. First of all, I don't think that we have evidence yet of some vast conspiracy. I don't think the Medellin cartel actually began as a vast conspiracy. What we have is a lot of small-scale entrepreneurs. The ones that get big are the small entrepreneurs that make a couple of good deals that get lucky. We also see similarities in just the kind of mindless violence, the shooting up of households or of entire places in these drive-by shootings. That type of violence, that quality of violence, is similar in both cases.
Herb Jerome, you want to say something about that?
Yeah, Tom, I'm not trying to minimize the deaths or the reason for them, but just one figure I'd like to throw out to kick around. Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, the area where we do the police work. Last year, we had 96 homicides, gang-related. Of those 96, 7 were directly attributed to gangs. Now, 1 is too many, but the point I'm trying to make is people are dying as a result of gangs, not necessarily because of drugs. Okay?
Gang activity is what we have to pay a lot more attention to in your
Of course.
Althea James, you have Bill Bennett here. He's the federal drug czar. He's about to come out with a plan on early September. What would you like to see in that would help someone like you, another mother in another city who's trying to keep gangs out of her family, drugs off her streets? What do you think would be the most helpful to mothers who are in your situation?
This is my personal opinion, but education and prevention is the best way. All the armies, all the police and all that is not going to teach these mothers how drugs are destroying their kids, how it can destroy them, and educate the young kids and let them know what it's all about. Prevention is the best way in education.
I want you to meet Wes Taylor. He was a member of a gang here in New York and Cutler, and eventually got out of the gang business, right?
I'd like to say something to Bill Bennett. No disrespect, of course. What we need to, what you need to realize is that it's not the jails, it's not the jails, it's not the police, it's none of that that's going to solve the situation. First, we have to come to terms with the fact that we are people too. They are people, and once they're considered people, we can go on that level. They'll come to that level as long as they're respected at that level as people. Until then, I mean, it's just going to be a matter of fight. It'll always be fight.
What about that, Bill?
I want to say to Mrs. James, I agree with her. Prevention and education, that's the long-term solution. And I think the parents and the family, and what you hinted at earlier, to the young man, I'd say, of course we want to treat people as people. But for that respect to be there, people have to act like people. They have to act like responsible human beings. And when someone drives by at 40 miles an hour shooting a gun at innocent people, they have not earned my respect. What they have earned is society's condemnation. If they then get their nose clean and want to come back, yeah, I know you're looking that way and you don't believe it, but you are not in a position in this society where you can make victims of innocent people. And if you do, sooner or later you're going to pay the price. That's the rules. You know, in those neighborhoods that we have seen worse afflicted, Watts and other places, the reason a lot of those neighborhoods haven't recovered is because there's just a hell of a lot more crime in those neighborhoods than where Tom Brokaw lives and than where I live. And if we could get rid of more of that crime, some of those communities could start to grow. And I want to treat you like a person, but you've got to act in such a way that merits the respect that you so much in search of.
Let it be said on Mr. Cutler's behalf that he did get himself out of the gang. He's now working, and things are going on for him. And a lot of people are reclaiming their lives, not just here in New York, but across the country as well. And a lot of these people in this audience tonight are willing to reach out and to help them as best they can. And I know that we all gathered here tonight.
Tom, my hat's off to him. But what do we do with the guy who doesn't leave the gang, who still wants to shoot people for a living? Is he entitled to our respect?
Well, I don't think anyone is suggesting that we want to give respect to people who are just wanton killers. It's a very complex problem, quite obviously. We have only begun to scratch the surface in these last 2 nights. But at least I think that we have raised the recognition factor in this country. It's not something that's happening elsewhere. It can come to your city, it can come to your street, it can come to your own family. It will only be solved if all of us become enlistees, if you will, in the Army and the war against gangs and drugs in this country. For all of the people who have come with us tonight in the audience and across the country, thank you very much. And we'll be back in a moment.
Coming up next on News Center 4 at 11, we'll have the latest medical prognosis on death.
Dramatic sky show tonight, while Earthlings into rock and roll scrambled for tickets to get some satisfaction. The news is next.
Time and curiosity, and I think that most viewers do. They want to know why things happen and how it'll affect their lives, and that's what we try to do here on a daily basis, is tell them what's new, what's different. That's what news is, change.
Bill Walsh joins Dick Enberg. O.J. Simpson joins Bob Costas. NBC Football. It's a whole new ball game.
Althea James, thank you very much. Herb Jerome, thanks very much for coming and providing me with a kind of traveling sanctuary when I was in Southern California. Wes McBride, you had the answer of the night. When I asked you how gangs get to other parts of the country, you said, well, by plane and by car and by automobile. We could use a little comic relief in this grim. Bill Bennett, Eric Clark, thank you very much. Dr. Taylor, Ryan Jenkins, thank all of you. Thank you for paying attention. On September 5th, President Bush will unveil his new anti-drug proposal for this country. It is something that we will all be watching very carefully and examining and reporting on NBC News. We hope that you have learned something about your country tonight, about what can happen to it, on gangs, cops, and drugs. I'm Tom Brokaw. On behalf of all of us, good night from NBC News.
I'm a blood soldier and war. I'm making sure crap try to battle me no more. Got a Uzi engaged, been banging for 12 years, so you know when I'm blasted, I'm being for real. Crab killer, I'm better. My games is full. I gotta go in and play. That says I kill crabs good. And when the whole party in, you know I join in. And when we finish blasting, you know I'ma win. Come on, homie, take a look at what I've done. Used to rock them and fight them. Now I kill them and run. I kill crabs.
Destruction. It's do or die. You in the game, you do or die. Yeah, go.
God damn it, you stopped it.